tied to U.S. weapons that caused mass destruction, like legally prohibited cluster bombs that target civilians.
It was a cluster bomb. The bomb with multiple mini bombs is dropped from an aircraft focusing on targeted areas.
South African viewers learned about how cluster bombs worked and what damage they caused. An underreported fact: half of Iraq's population is under the age of 15. These young people became a primary target. This is what Baghdad's pediatric hospital looked like, floor after floor of cluster bomb survivors. This was filmed not by a network, but by independent filmmaker Patrick Dillon. Human Rights Watch reported cluster weapons caused hundreds of civilian casualties like these. There was extensive use of napalm-like Mark 77 firebombs. It was denied at first, but then admitted. More onerous was the almost total blackout on the use of radioactive depleted uranium, which hardens anti-tank weapons. This is especially ironic in light of Washington's constant claims of an Iraqi nuclear threat. The issue was covered overseas. Arnim Stauth, a German journalist, documented this proliferation in an Emmy Award-winning report for ARD in Germany.
Wissen Sie, dass gerade dieser Panzer hier radioaktiv ist? Nein, da ist nichts, sagt der Soldat, überhaupt nichts. Aber wir haben es gemessen. Nein, er ist nicht radioaktiv, dieser Panzer sowieso nicht. Er ist mit Uranmunition abgeschossen worden. Sorry, ich muss jetzt weitermachen.
In the British back office, a list of troublesome
The BBC
subjects
took viewers into a back room at the Coalition Media Center. On the wall, a list of subjects briefers were ordered to avoid. On that list, DU, or depleted uranium. There have been a number of studies of misperceptions by viewers that many Americans believe that there was an al-Qaeda Iraq connection, that many Americans believe that there were Iraqi hijackers attacking the World Trade Center.
I think that's part of the campaign. It was a very conscious effort to use terms that would have people connect in their minds Iraq and the incident of 9/11. You imply that these are the same kind of people, and if they're the same kind of people, they must have had something to do with it. Had they done an hour's worth of research, they could have had a paragraph in their story which said, the Pentagon said this, however. There were no however paragraphs.
The new information dominance strategy worked thanks to advice from marketing experts, Hollywood producers, and communication specialists like John Rendon, who were monitoring the media worldwide. Their job was to keep the public well propagandized.
Is that there were 5 wars in Iraq. There really was the reality of combat operations from the air, on the ground, and from the sea. The second war was the war the United States saw. The third war was the war that Europe saw. The fourth war was the war that Arab audiences saw. And the fifth war was the war the rest of the world saw. And as we monitored that in real time, we found that none of them were ever in alignment.
When you look at the war in Iraq, it's at times impossible to separate media, CIA, public relation firms, government propaganda. It all came together.
What is the problem here, Danny? Danny? So what's the problem here?
Fair and balanced coverage. The Fox News Channel.
Fox News may seem a fun place to its fans and a cartoon to its critics, but its ideological zeal is serious and carefully calculated, as longtime former producer Charlie Reyna revealed on a media website. Quote, "The roots of Fox News Channel's day-to-day on-air bias are actual and direct. They come in the form of an executive memo distributed electronically each morning, addressing what stories will be covered and often suggesting how they should be covered. The memo is the Bible." Fox's response? This charge is unfounded. People want to work here.
Terrorists could be planning to attack Westerners overseas.
What was called the Fox effect drove all the TV coverage to the right. No network wanted to be accused of being unpatriotic.
Arnett gave an interview to Iraqi television in which he criticized American war planning and said his reports about civilian casualties in the Iraqi resistance were encouraging to anti-war protesters in America.
The American war planners misjudged the determination of the Iraqi.
Veteran correspondent Peter Arnett was targeted by Fox News for his decision to say on Iraqi TV what he was already saying on MSNBC.
If I'm wrong, you didn't go on Iraqi TV to say, I support Saddam Hussein, did you? You didn't endorse one side or the other.
I didn't endorse one side. But it was part of the hysteria that had developed surrounding this war. Now, there's a degree of hysteria about every war that America participates and just gets involved in, and this was part of the hysterical reaction, and I was basically, just swept up in that incredible explosion of anger. I think there were 157 cartoons of me in the newspaper the next morning, most of them in bed with Saddam Hussein. Management called up and says, look, the pressure is too great. We've had thousands of emails and calls, and it's time we have to drop you.
What I've learned, and has gone unreported until now, is that those emails were not from the public at large, but part of an orchestrated campaign by Free Republic, a right-wing online network. We were freaked, an official at National Geographic told me, explaining that 20,000 emails calling Arnett a traitor bombarded their executives, who then panicked and discharged him. The Freepers boasted of their success. The study found widespread misperceptions among viewers. The people with the most misinformation watched the Fox News channel, although viewers of other channels were also receptive to inaccuracies. Public broadcasting viewers and listeners were misled the least. This Canadian study highlights another misperception about the media itself. Quote, most Americans were not aware of how one-sided and biased the coverage had been. They believed the news media had served the country well.
Say what you like about Rupert Murdoch's Fox network, its strange intimacy with God and the US administration, but it takes real flair to put this on national television.
Using the facilities when there aren't any facilities. How you going to the bathroom, buddy?
So the reporter called a soldier over.
Do you want to demonstrate for us how you sit on that shovel? You want me to do it? Go ahead. There you go. There you go. Isn't that something?
Nothing like this has happened. The war in Iraq continues, and no one takes you closer than CNN Live.
In this war, what had once been known as the CNN effect had faded, but CNN was still a news leader. I learned that CNN mounted two news teams, one for the US channel and one for the rest of the world on CNN International. Was it just different strokes for different folks?
Explain to me why CNN had one type of coverage for America and one type for the rest of the world.
I'm not so sure it was different. The content was the same. The presentation sometimes is different. American audiences have certain expectations of how the news is given to them.
In just 3 weeks, the U.S. military seized Baghdad with a small army of journalists tagging along. Robert Pelton, operating unilaterally now, observed the network news operations.
When you're a journalist in Baghdad, you live in a fancy hotel, you're hooked to the internet all the time. You've got people in New York making decisions for you, sending you story ideas that you are going to go out and do. You get up in the morning, you've got a driver, you've got an air-conditioned GMC, you get a driver, a translator, cameraman, you get a security guy, little kind of British guy with tattoos on his arms, and off you go to shoot the story. You know, you put your vests on, get your sound bites, you come back in time to cut it together, and then the talking head does the stand-up, boom, off it goes.
Goodbye, Saddam!